Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. Talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynncullenshow@gmail.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
Hey there, and welcome to you. It's July 25th, as far as I know, which is a Monday in, I was going to say in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, for that matter. It's a Monday just about any place. Oh, God, I'm babbling. As if on cue, right about 1 minute ago, some machine of some sort, like a jackhammerish machine, started up right next to my house. So if there is that kind of sound interference, sorry. Well, the last time we spoke was Thursday, and that evening was the evening of this final, at least for this season, of the January 6th committee hearing. And as usual, it was well done and a just devastating indictment of Donald Trump. And I think, and a clear indication that what he did was certainly an extraordinary dereliction of duty as the president, but also clear indication of treasonous intent. There's no doubt about it. That the inaction that was essentially the story of Thursday night, the fact that he did nothing to stop the murder, the terror that was occurring just down the street from him in an effort to keep him in the White House. Really, anyway. It seems like ancient history now, doesn't it? That seems so long ago. But I do want to say that I had, and a few times I found myself talking back to the witnesses and even to Lynn Cheney, because there's quite clearly, and I understand it politically, a dynamic that the committee is engaging in, a narrative that the people who have shown up to testify, these almost all Republicans, right, who worked for Donald Trump, that coming from them, this condemnation of his actions obviously bear more weight, and conceivably could bear more weight with peeling away some of his ill supporters. But in doing so, and in lauding, I think rather promiscuously, the heroism and courage of these witnesses, this is going too far for me. I will acknowledge the courage of what's her name, Cassidy Hutchinson, but all of these people we're talking about supported Donald Trump up until the end. Supported a man that was clearly an egomaniacal, narcissistic, outrageous figure who had no real interest in the job, but simply wanted the attention and the power that came with it. This petty purveyor of constant lies. They served him. Until for each one of them, there came a moment where it was, I can't do this anymore. But the fact that it took them 4 years or more to arrive at that conclusion makes me a little less inclined to talk about how wondrous they are. Particularly this guy that was there who was on the security, national security, Matthew Pottinger, his name was. I mean, he wasted no opportunity during the hearing to laud Trump. Major foreign policy, this and that. He did this, he did that, because this guy was, part of everything. And he wanted to say, I'm proud of the work I did. But and all of them, the whole list of them, the lawyers, his personal lawyers, all those. I mean, they now we look at them and think, oh, how grand of you to stand up. But these were the guys that enabled and I don't know. I just don't want to hold them up quite as high as Liz Cheney does. And she's also doing that too, because I think she still somewhere believes that she and people like these can redeem the Republican Party. But there's something about, throwing ticker tape parades for people who were with him every inch of the way. The other woman who was a witness was what? She was in the press office. I mean, she was. Her job was to disseminate, daily misinformation for him, which she willingly did. So, I mean, I'm just saying, if you think of these people, for some reason, these last two did not float my boat. That they were with Trump throughout. So, his support of the Charlottesville murderous, racist, anti-Semitic crowd, his now base, which has grown since then, didn't say it didn't. Remember, very fine people on both sides. That didn't apparently make these people say, good God, what the hell is he talking about? And everything, the shaking down of Zelensky, I needn't go through but there they were. And I was talking to somebody yesterday who is not watching these, which I find amazing. But, she already thinks he's a traitor, but she says, I can't watch. I just can't. I said, well, you're missing a good show. But she said, and I think these guys, they're just trying to now resurrect any chance they have of a career. Well, perhaps. I don't know. Everybody makes calculations. It does take a certain measure of, I guess, courage to come forward at this fraught time and to disassociate yourself from your crowd and condemn the very people that you served alongside. That is not a comfortable position for anybody to be in. But I don't know. I think it was Michelle Goldberg. I've got it here somewhere, but I can't find it. Wrote a piece. She had the same kind of reaction that I have. It is. Oh, here it is. I just have a little screenshot of her last two sentences. And she says, I guess he's talking about them the committee looking to use these people and to raise them up as great heroes. And she says, in order to have the committee get Trump, she says, have been liberal with their absolution of what these heralded witnesses did before they became heralded witnesses. And she says that doesn't mean absolution is deserved. And well, in some of my more generous moments, I think that's harsh, but I don't know. What are you saying, Ed? Today's version is on YouTube. City Paper website has a show from July 21st. Well, I'm on YouTube. I'll let the parties that be know. Hey. You know, increasingly found myself again with friends last night saying, I mean, I really fear, and I'm not someone who I think is easily scared. I truly fear for where we're heading. And one of the reasons I fear is that the more I read about the people I fear, my fellow Americans, my neighbors, people I know, the more I read about what their perception is, the more fearful I get, because they too are afraid. All of us are fearful that we're losing the country. But they think it's us that are destroying the country. And we think it's them that's destroying the country. I mean, that is boiling it down to as simplistic. But that scares me, because I've been reading more and more about some of these candidates that are on the ballot in November running for really important positions, and including here, certainly. What? Okay. Sorry. I'm getting some information and I can't. Oh, shit. Where was I? Oh, read it. Yeah. Keep reading about these horrible Republican candidates. And I saw somebody try to sum it up. And looking at, again, our fellow Americans and how we just can't, you and me can't comprehend how they got to where they are and how they believe and how they fear us. And this person wrote this, and I think it's pretty, I agree is all I want to say. And I thought it was well enough said that I'm sharing it with you. They say the Republican base and the GOP followed each other down a rabbit hole of hate, lies, paranoia, and wild conspiracies. I mean, and that's been going on for years and years and years. I remember I was over at WPTT. How long ago is that? I didn't even have gray hair. And I remember that was a metaphor that came to my mind. The metaphor was from Alice in Wonderland. And that the Republicans had gone down the rabbit hole into Crazyville. So this person writes, okay, so that's where they've gone. Hate, lies, crazy conspiracy theories, paranoia. And they go on to say, is it any wonder the further down that hole they go, the faster they swirl the drain and the worse things get? It's like the political equivalent of the phenomena of the birth of a black hole in astronomy. The density of the political insanity threatens to become so great, the whole structure collapses in on itself and consumes everything that comes in its path. As I think that's a great metaphor. That rabbit hole has now become this black hole. And that's even scarier because things begin to, as he says, the density threatens to become so great that the whole structure simply And this person goes on to say, since then, each iteration, he goes back to Reagan and saying government was the problem. He said, since then, each iteration of right-wing extremism has edged closer to and squeezed out its centrist elements. Well, that's obvious. You know who's a centrist now? Liz Cheney. God, she's as conservative as you can be. But this Republican Party is not a conservative party. Good God, there is nothing conservative about them. They are radicals who believe if they have to, they'll just kill all of us. They are radicals. And we've got to start employing the right terms. To call Republicans conservative is absurd. So as it's squeezed out anybody who's not in lock goose step with their new insanity, the grievances grow, the hostility grows, and now it's just open warfare against the American government, against every American institution, and against democracy itself. So I'm just saying all this so you know why I fear. We had to stop considering the Republican Party as the Republican Party that existed in our lifetime. We have seen it change, and in this malignant, horrific way. And unfortunately, we still have only two parties in this country, mainstream parties. And this malignant, authoritarian, increasingly violent and unhinged party is one of them. They do not believe in the America that we do. And I think we got what the American experiment was to be, even if it has often fallen short. But it is their trading in hate and what the guy who, the horrible Vance who's running in Ohio, the hillbilly elegy guy. He, on the campaign trail, tells his followers that Biden and Democrats are responsible for fentanyl overdoses. He actually says it is intentional. We intentionally, supposedly, opened the borders to let in the fentanyl to kill off the very people who didn't vote with us. That's what they're telling their people. And people who believe that, child sex rings are being run by Hillary Clinton out of the basement of a pizza parlor in Washington, D.C., that's nothing to believe what he's saying. And the guy running, I'm just talking about Ohio candidates now, somebody running for the Congress, the House, in Toledo. This is an area right now that is in Democratic hands. Marcy Kaptur, been there for a long time, good woman. They gerrymandered her district, so she's in a fight for her life. And she's running against a guy who, let me find his wonderful things. Here's what he says. The Democrat. Now, he has an ad in which he walks through a dilapidated factory. But he isn't alone. No, these candidates never are. He isn't alone. He's holding a semi-automatic, walking through a deserted factory, because there is the imagery that they love. Somehow, the factory showing America's decline, the gun showing American power, the power of the people. And what is he saying as he's walking through? He's saying that the Democrats are purposefully destroying our economy. Their agenda is to bring America to its knees. And then he says, and I am willing to do whatever it takes, brandishing his semi-automatic. If I have to kick down doors, that's just what patriots do. We've already talked about the Senate candidate, Greiten, in Missouri, whose ads also have him crashing through a door with guns drawn and smoke bomb going off or something. And he's actually gunning for Republicans who aren't Republican enough. These people are, I'm sorry, I've seen some nasty ads in my life. But the Republicans have brought, just unbelievable. Ed writes, did you hear that over the weekend, the ex-president said at a rally, we may have to do it all over again. Did he define it? Probably he was saying, we might have to do it again and we'll do it right this time, huh? Ed says, I'm sitting here thinking about how the Democrats, the anti-Trumpers, the DOJ, and others are not going to want to be blamed for creating a second January 6th or even so much unrest that it might amount to a civil war. Well, that is the apparently fraught calculations they're making. I don't know. I think he has to be tried. And I'm looking to that Atlanta DA to take him out in a much easier kind of prosecution in which the evidence is just, it's on videotape, it's on audio tape, him breaking the law. I don't see how that is difficult. And her, you can tell from how she's pulling in everybody from Giuliani to Senator Lindsey Graham, that she's going for him. She is going for him, and she intends to use RICO. She intends to get him like they finally took Capone down, racketeering. And I can't think of a better way for Trump to go than to go like another corrupt criminal like Capone finally got, right? On the other hand, and I think I've mentioned this, I am worried that by taking him down, and he is being injured. Rupert Murdoch's friggin' New York Post came out and went after him after Thursday's hearing. Now, Trumpers read that paper. And so they're starting to, even if they don't want to see it or hear it, they're starting to see that the places they go for information are starting to turn a little bit on Donald Trump. But I thought the best thing that was said about him. I don't think that matters because he can be brought down. But the 40+% of the American electorate who followed him and still likes him, but now might see that, maybe we should go with somebody else. He's damaged. They ain't going anywhere. They ain't going to be jailed. So I think it was, God, why do I keep blanking on his name? Kinzinger. Kinzinger, I think, is the one who said that Trump is like the cancer that you're fighting. And the problem with it is that it's metastasized. So even if you cut out the tumor, Trump, the cancer has already spread throughout the body politic. And what do we do about that? And what scares me, I'm scared of so many things he says, what scares me is that, of course, it seems like we already know who the next one up is, who they'll then turn to. And that's this vile but smoother governor of Florida, DeSantis. In 2024, if Trump were their nominee, I can see a Democrat beating him because he has been injured. And we know what life was like with him in the White House. And America will not want that again. But DeSantis, that's a nice new face. And I ain't so sure we would beat him. So my fear is that in holding Trump accountable, we hurt him enough to push him out of the way and create a situation where the Republicans will unbelievable that anyone would vote for these people. Win everything. Okay, I'm going to your emails here. Oh, God. All right, so this is what's on Liz Cheney, smug self. Listen, look, I have no people trying to take her down now. She is our friend right now because she is helping us in this most important fight of holding the Republicans and Trump accountable. But as I said, I think earlier, she's an old school, incredibly conservative Republican with all of the policies that come with that. And I'd never vote for her, but I do admire her. That is one smart cookie who's got to know that her life is literally on the line. Not her political life. I don't think she gives two hoots about that. Her life. Ben writes, first, the Trump administration people testifying at the hearing sometimes speak about his accomplishments in office. Yes, I know, it annoys me. I thought to myself, what accomplishments? I think the Trump administration is marked by a decided lack of accomplishment, except perhaps for destabilizing our international relationships. And, this is the big one. And the placing of federal judges. Well, that's huge. And if you don't say that one out loud in a mixed audience, like the hearings, but the greatest thing he did is secure the Supreme Court of the United States for these Christian right-wingers, Catholic, actually, right-wingers, for generations. Ben writes, secondly, one person said something along the lines of, in a close race, you have a right to contest the results. That's right, but this wasn't a close race. That is true. Biden won handily over Trump. Yeah, it was not a close race. During Friday's Save America rally, Trump-backed Arizona gubernatorial candidate Carrie Lake, who called him Superman. Yeah, she's a piece of work. These people are terrifying. He said this, we will never give in, we will never yield, we will never, ever, ever back down. As long as we are unified, the tyrants we are against do not stand a chance because we are Americans who kneel to God and no one else. He's never knelt to God in his life. And this Carrie Lake goes on to say, we can't wait for Superman to save us. She's talking about him. We have to get involved. I believe Superman is coming back. It's like the second coming. Yeah. And when he does, we will be by his side. It's a, terrifying cult of personality. And I mean, if I were ever to get into a cult of personality, it sure wouldn't. I don't understand how anyone can look or listen to that guy. And that's the guy you're going to worship. Are you kidding me? He is loathsome. But again, just to reiterate how appalling this supposed Republican Party, it really needs a name change. I mean, I don't know. The current iteration of the party is. I have mentioned before that CPAC, the Conservative Political Action Committee, that they all go to and kneel to. CPAC, which seems to have a convention every 3 weeks. Because I'm going to talk about another one. They were just over in Hungary. Remember that? They traveled, an American political PAC, which, supports one party, the Republican Party, traveled to Hungary to hold, I think, their last convention. And they went there to kneel to a man that they quite openly look up to and want to emulate. And that is essentially the dictator of Hungary now, Viktor Orban. He traffics in the same crap they traffic in. Hate, fear of immigrants, fear of people different than you, fear of gay people. And he has destroyed their educational system. It's now a propaganda system. It is a country that technically is a democracy, because they have elections. Of course, Russia has elections. But like Russia, these elections have become foregone conclusions. And what Hungary is still doing, I think it's in NATO still. They need to kick it out. It is no more does it belong there. But he is coming in to their next conference on August 4th. The love affair continues. All the guys who potentially could be presidential candidates if Trump somehow gets sidelined are all going to be there to kneel and pay obeisance. They are not going to question having this proto-fascist come. They love this guy. And I just want to read you a recent quote from Orban right now. We, he said, he was speaking to his people, we Hungarians are not a mixed race, and we do not want to become a mixed race. And that was part of a larger rant about how other European countries were becoming mixed race. Let us be clear. Racism is a huge, huge part of this Republican Party. Hate of others. Let's come closer to home and to the man that Republicans in our state overwhelmingly chose to be the next governor of Pennsylvania. And that is the loathsome Mastriano. Apparently, he's running a campaign unlike any we've ever seen. He has no, if campaigns are about money, he doesn't have a lot. He hasn't raised much. I don't think he's raised $1 million. He doesn't have to. He knows where his people are. And he talks openly about who he is and what he stands for. There is not a second of apology or equivocation. Terrifying person. And I believe I mentioned this last week. One of the people he gave money to help him was the guy who founded and runs a Twitter-like thingamajig platform called Gab, G-A-B. And that guy now has endorsed him, and everybody who signs up on Gab is immediately connected to Mastriano. So he now he went from a few thousand people following him on Gab to now every person on Gab, tens of thousands. Now, again, I know I mentioned this. Gab was the place where the Tree of Life killer posted his crap because it is an anti-Semitic, racist, anti-gay platform. And again, the Republican voters of this state overwhelmingly, he was 20 points ahead of the next Republican on the primary ballot. So if you're a Republican here in Pennsylvania, whoa, terrifying. And this is so terrifying that a bunch of Jewish leaders and Black leaders came out this weekend and tried to draw attention to Mastriano and his connection to the Tree of Life murderer, essentially. Both comfortable in the same swamp. He doesn't let any mainstream media into any of his rallies. You don't see a lot of reporting because you can't, he won't sit for interviews. He just intends to get in and do his thing. Now, let me tell you how dangerous, just in one instance, what he's doing is. Who's he running against? A very qualified, even if you don't like his politics, a qualified candidate who was the attorney general and a very active attorney general here, Josh Shapiro. He's a Jew. So, since Mastriano has gotten on Gab, where anti-Semites gather, and everyone on Gab is now connected to him, and it is known that his opponent is a Jew. Well, what do you think's happening? Yeah, it's happening. We are playing with fire here. And I know we've learned over the last years that humans' capacity for denial is extraordinary. It really is. I know some animals can change their colors and stuff. I mean, that's pretty remarkable adaptation. But I think Homo sapiens' denial adaptation is equally extraordinary. Denying what your own eyes see, what your own ears hear, because you just can't handle it. Did you see the news? Again, I don't watch local news. I'm wondering if I should try to force myself to so I know what maybe some of you are seeing. But 2 gay clubs in Pittsburgh had to be closed down this weekend because both were targets of bomb threats. So the uptick in intimidation, threats, crimes against the groups that a guy like Hungary's Orban and Pennsylvania's Mastriano and the rest, the groups that they target are being targeted more and more and more. My God, one of the things this party, this Republican Party, one of their biggest, blacks, of course, but blacks move over. They've got a better one, a new one. And you know what they are? They're children. Trans kids they're like, boy, you want to get a group of these guys worked up? Trot an 8-year-old kid onto the stage who is uncomfortable in their own body. They will go berserk. A mob. They're frightening. Oh, I just remember my favorite part of Thursday's hearing, I loved it, was their takedown of Senator Josh Hawley. I still don't know how you pronounce it. Hawley of Missouri. Boy, they took him down. First, they showed that infamous picture from January 6th of him in suit and tie heading into the Capitol and turning to the mob that was forming and raising his fist to them in solidarity, which we find out drew, I didn't know this from the testimony, drew a big cry of then support from the crowd. He egged them on with that. And then he proceeded into the Capitol. Well, it was just a few hours later where that mob he helped incite, decided to go into the Capitol too. And the senator, along with other senators, was rousted out of the Senate chamber and sent to an undisclosed and safe location. And so after playing the picture of him and his raised fist, they showed video from security footage of the same tough Senator Hawley running for his life that from the very people he had just incited. You know what? That, and it was a takedown, that takedown destroyed him. If there was one, I'll tell you one thing that has clearly come out of the committee. They have destroyed him. You don't outlive or outrun that video. And as if that's not astonishing enough, guess what I found out? He's got a book coming out. Yeah. Because, you know, he's one of the people who's thinking of being president. He's got a book coming out. And you got to have a book now. And you know what its title is? You can't make it up. Manhood. Poland. The masculine virtues America needs. So this craven jerk has written a book on manhood. I wonder how that's going to go after the video that no one can get out of their heads of him running. Haven't you seen video of other senators and people walking in that situation? He's the first one I've seen literally running. But he's got a book coming out. That's right, on manhood. You can't make it up. And of course, it's being published by that god-awful publishing house, Regnery Publishing, which publishes all of these right-wing screeds. The reason I care is, and I've told you this, I was a secretary to Al Regnery back in the early 70s, and he was a little rich kid. He was a young lawyer. He was a little rich kid from a publishing family, and I didn't know anything about any of it, but I believe he went on to run it. Either him or his father or uncle, Al Regnery. Regnery Publishing. What a jerk he was. Okay, so every time I see that Regnery Publishing, I go berserk. Hey, speaking of going berserk, and this is apropos of nothing that we've spoken about. I started watching something on HBO Max, and I don't know what you're into. But it is a 6-hour, do it hour by hour documentary about Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward, his wife. And man, Paul Newman to me was the most gorgeous human being ever. So anytime I have 6 hours where I can look at Paul Newman, I'm doing it. And my admiration, she was one of the great actors. I can believe she's still alive too, but hasn't acted in a million years. Anyway, I'm watching it the first hour with friends, and they're talking about them both, where they came from, where they met, young wannabe actors in New York. And all of a sudden, they showed a building. It was a brick building, and my blood ran cold. I hadn't seen that building in, I don't know, 50 years? Yeah, more than 50 years. And it's where Joanne Woodward went to study acting, called the Neighborhood Playhouse. That's where I went too. Actually, in the recent obits of James Caan, that's where he went. A lot of it. Neighborhood Playhouse was considered extremely good, difficult to get into, sort of very selective. So when you're there, everybody's always saying, and this one went, and that one went, and this and this. And you go there because you were taught, he's dead now, by a man named Sanford Meisner. And no sooner did they show that building than Meisner showed up on screen. And again, I think I let out a scream. I hadn't heard that voice, again, in 50 years. And obviously, I was traumatized by him. And I gained a lot from that experience, like 2 years of boot camp, emotional boot camp. But seeing him again was just so mind-blowing. He went through an extremely heavy glass ashtray. One of those ones that I probably weighed like 3 pounds. It just is huge. But he once winged it across a stage. It wasn't in my direction. It was in the poor soul that I was doing an exercise with direction. It's just a terrifying person. But a lot of people say a hell of an acting coach. I guess he was. Anyway, I really think that thing's good. And I'm going to assume that Meisner ain't going to show up for the rest of it because, they dealt with, that's where Joanne went. She went to the Neighborhood Playhouse and they had Meisner there. Oh God, I have so much stuff to talk about. I don't even know where to go. Too much. And it's only 5 minutes. Okay, well, speaking of, again, the horrible candidate, by the way, too many thoughts, too disorganized. I got to tell you. So Mastriano and Shapiro, what are the odds of two guys whose name ends in an O? Mastriano and Shapiro are running for the next governor. And this is like the most important governor's race since I've lived here. Because if the Democrats don't win, say goodbye. I mean, first of all, say goodbye to abortion legal in this state, and we'll be living in one of the red states if we don't win. We will be living in, might as well move to Mississippi and get it over with. You'll be living in a red state. And the polling shows as like pretty much a tie. How, if that is true, I mean, if that is true, it says a lot about the people in this state. You have one Christian, racist, nationalist running, and you've got another Jew who believes in democracy and diversity running. And media all over the country are zeroing in with all the horrific Republican candidates that are out there. Mastriano is pretty much head and shoulders over them all as the one that nobody can believe is actually the standard bearer of the Republican Party, and that he's essentially statistically tied with a qualified Democrat. I mean, we've already talked about how Republicans in the party here, ex-office holders, have like come together and said, we will not vote for him. Republicans who never voted for a Democrat in their life are saying, I'm voting for Shapiro. And they're trying to tell anyone who will listen to them that used to vote for them, this guy, Mastriano, is dangerous, literally dangerous. Statistical high. I remind myself that that's how I felt about Donald Trump. Like, oh, come on, you ain't going to elect him, are we? There's no way enough Americans are that nuts. Yeah, well, shows how much I knew. So I'm here to tell you we are in great jeopardy and better work in any way you can. Maryland just had their primary, and they too, the Maryland Republican Party there too, a Trump-supported, white nationalist, totally unqualified Trumper running for the governorship in Maryland, which is currently held by a Republican, Larry Hogan, who immediately upon seeing that this crazy jerk had won, said, oh, I won't be voting for him. The Republican governor of Maryland saying, I ain't voting for that guy who thinks he's going to be the next Republican governor. And in fact, he said, I don't want to see him in the governor's chair, and I wouldn't invite him into the governor's office. He finds him so noxious. These are the caliber of people that Republicans are voting for in primaries, which is, again, a reminder of how far down that black hole they've gone. And I think once they're down, the rabbit hole was one thing. Once you're down the black hole, I don't know that you can be retrieved. I really don't. Anyway, that's it for me. Oh, dear. Well, at least it won't be 110 today. That's the good news. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry for being alive at this point and having the kind of job here that requires me to say what I think, because it is unsettling, which is, to put it mildly. Anyway, see you guys tomorrow. I hope. Bye.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.